Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Injuries Daily Update. Now, life moves pretty fast in the FPL community, particularly when we've got a set of midweek fixtures, but there's no time to rest. Lots to update on, lots to cover. We're going to mop up the game week 5 fixtures and then look ahead to game week 6. Now, I'm not going to make this all about Arsenal, but we do have a number of injury problems to address initially. Now, the unfortunate news, Thomas Partey and Mo Elneny, they're two players who suffered serious muscular setbacks. No time frame on either one of those players. Both will be referred to club doctors and specialists to determine that return to play timeline. In particularly, Thomas Partey, that's a worry. It's in a similar era to that thigh injury he suffered towards the end of last season. That kept him out for around about 2 months. Hopeful that Mikel Arteta doesn't have to deal without the centre midfielder for a similar sort of timeline. Mo Elneny, that's a hamstring injury. He did manage to complete 90 minutes during that game that he was involved in. However, post-match evaluation revealed that's a significant setback. We've seen Lokonga come in as a central midfielder against Aston Villa. However, the emergence of Tomiyasu, who has been training well without any kind of reaction for the last few weeks, that could potentially push him into that right back slot. And we have seen Ben White possibly as a holding midfielder in there. So one to watch. Zinchenko, he's probably the closest of those players who've been injured. He was touch and go for that Aston Villa game. He has been seen on a training pitches. That was a minor knee problem. Now, he should be assessed ahead of this game, and it wouldn't be any surprise to see him return to the matchday squad. But like I say, no chances will be taken with regards to that. Martin Odegaard, he was forced off against Villa with what Mikel Arteta referred to as a heavy kick in around that foot and ankle, was seen limping post-match. The good news is if it's impact, then hopefully that gives him a chance. And of course, Arsenal don't play until a Sunday where they travel to Old Trafford. So, depending on how that evolves over the next 24 to 48 hours, that potentially puts him with a good chance of recovering. If not, Emile Smith-Rowe, he's back in contention. He's been in the matchday squad for a few weeks now. We know that he's been troubled by that problematic groin issue that stems back to late 2021. But like I say, he's back in contention and he is a player that could possibly fill his space. The only other update that we have from Arsenal is with regards to Aaron Ramsdale. He appeared early in the second half to have some problems with his hamstring, looked in a little bit discomfort, did complete 90 minutes, however. But Mikel Arteta did flag that there was a concern there. So again, that will be something that will need to be checked and assessed. What I would say, with it being a goalkeeper, if it's not a huge issue, if it's just a little bit of tightness, that does give him a chance. Although with regards to kicking, those duties may be passed on to somebody like Gabriel, but we remains to be seen. Like I say, we have that additional 24 hours recovery for Arsenal, which will help them massively. Jordan Henderson and Jurgen Klopp, another hamstring problem. It seems to be the season of hamstring issues. Over the last 10 days, we've seen 10 time loss. That includes the likes of, for my boys, Alan San-Maxim, Bruno Guimaraes, Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier, but also West Ham, Ben Johnson, Mangala from Nottingham Forrest. All of those players affected by hamstring injuries in recent times. And we do see a spike in incidents around these game week 4, game week 5 as we get into that season. So I will be producing some data with regards to that. What we do know with Jordan Henderson, that's going to be another significant spell out. Jurgen Klopp said that it doesn't look good for the Liverpool skipper, unfortunately. We've had one question with regards to the availability or the potential return to play time frame for Aymeric Laporte. Of course, he's been out after undergoing surgery the back end of May. So he's had a few months on the sidelines. Now, that initial timeline suggests a return possibly by mid-September or early October. That coincides with the international break. So what I would suggest is we won't see the centre-back until early October, certainly in contention for that City team, knowing that we have Ruben Dias, John Stones, and also Nathan Ake all vying for that centre-back role. And it be determined, whether he gets called up for that Spanish national team. They do have a couple of Nation League games during that period. And it may be good if Aymeric Laporte is there or thereabouts to maybe go away with the national team and hopefully get some minutes under his belt to put him, stands him in good stead for a return to domestic football. But like I say, we'll know more probably over the next maybe 10 to 14 days with regards to that. So progressing well, but certainly not in contention at this moment in time. Now, I did touch upon a few Newcastle players just before. Alexander Isak announced his arrival at Newcastle with a goal at Anfield. Very unfortunate. Not to add a second to that, VAR intervened, unfortunately. He came off in around that hour-long mark, hasn't done much training with the team, only had his work permit cleared just, minutes literally before the deadline. He picked up a dead leg. Again, nothing too serious. One of these injuries where we couldn't categorically state that he will be okay for the weekend. These are very painful. They can evolve, and we have seen instances in the past. Rafinha is one that springs to mind that almost, that resulted in the player being sent to hospital and also keep him out for up to a month on the sideline. So, they're not that minor or slight knock that people tend to think. There's a possibility that timeline could be extended, but nothing at this point suggests it is serious. And like I say, Eddie Howe did indicate that it was always in the plan to bring him off in and around that hour mark. Jamal Lascelles also looked to be understand that's fatigue related, a little bit of cramp. Opportunities in that first team have been limited this season, but we did see Eddie Howe shuffle his backline at Anfield, and Fabian Shaw dropped out, and also Sven Botman. So those players will be back in contention this weekend, and Jamal Lascelles will probably find himself back on the bench. Now, a couple of players who maybe not necessarily flagged as injury doubt, but certainly to be aware of, particularly as we haven't seen that glut of changes midweek that we maybe expected. That would probably come this weekend. And one of those players, a doubt, question marks, is Aaron Cresswell. Now, David Moyes said at the weekend that he was struggling with a little bit of tightness in his adductor. Midweek last night against Tottenham, he came off around about that 70th minute mark. And again, that's an indication that he was either just being managed, just being a little bit careful. And hopefully, the decision will be around, do we take a risk and play him out there for his third game in a week, or do we just hold the player back to protect him? Now, there are other options in and around that left back space as well. Angelo Ogbonna was his replacement last night, but also Emerson. He came on later in the game for the last 5 or 6 minutes. He is another option for David Moyes, so watch this space. Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, we heard prior to kick-off that the likes of Jack Grealish and certainly Nathan Ake wouldn't be involved against Nottingham Forest, but the pair are progressing well on the training pitches. They were still working individually, but they're working with the ball. Now, he didn't rule out the possibility of those two players featuring this weekend. However, he did have the caveat that said, it may be this weekend or it may be midweek. If not, then certainly we're looking at game week 7. So those two players aren't far away with regards to that. And, we spoke about Erling Haaland prior to last night's game against Nottingham Forest, and how Pep's comment post Newcastle had said that he wouldn't be, playing all of those minutes around congested fixture periods. Of course, Erling Haaland started following on from his hat-trick, and he bagged another hat-trick. And like we did suggest, it would take a brave manager again to drop somebody like Erling Haaland in this kind of form. So it could be, that he is starting games, but his game time will be limited, and he's maybe coming off around that 55, 65, 70th minute mark. Particularly with Alvarez, looked really bright, looked really sharp, hit the post and bagged himself a couple of goals as well. Elsewhere, Tottenham, we've seen the return of Oliver Skipp to the Tottenham bench. Antonio Conte only made one substitute in that game. Oliver Skipp was involved, but he's only had 2 full days of training, so he wasn't quite ready for that. Christian Romero, he also returned to full training on Monday, but he wasn't named in the matchday squad. And that was mainly due to the fact that Davinson Sanchez has been in pretty decent nick, but also he had the likes of Doherty, Tanganga, Lenglet, and Spence, all defenders who could slot into that backline on the bench. So no need to rush the Argentine back too quickly. Bentancur, he picked up a knock at Nottingham Forrest at the City Ground. That's concussion. Now, providing he goes through that protocol and clears that fine, he will be in contention. No problems there. Now, 2 press conferences we've had on Thursday, which basically means we're going to have 18 updates on Friday. So it's going to be pretty hectic and pretty busy with that. But Steve Cooper, Nottingham Forrest, no fresh injury concerns. They made 3 changes at the Etihad. Expect more from the Nottingham Forest back. He said it's a tough, challenging week physically for his team. He'll freshen that side up. Of course, we've had more incomings. Willie Bolly became the 19th summer signing for Forest. So I expect some of those fringe players, those new signings, to be involved. Lingard was one of those players who dropped out, so we could see him return. And I'm also expecting and hoping that Emmanuel Dennis will come in for his first Premier League start. He's been in and around the peripherals of that start 11 and getting minutes from the bench. Also, we have heard from Jess Marsh. Now, the big update with regards to the Spaniard, Rodrigo, we said that he would be sent for a scan, and depending on the outcome of that, would determine how that shoulder injury would be managed over the coming weeks, conservatively versus surgery. But thankfully, the Spaniard does not need to go under the knife, which basically means that they're going to treat that conservatively. However, he won't be rushed back anytime soon. Again, with that international break coming up, he'll be targeting a return in early October. So in terms of who comes in for Rodrigo, well, Patrick Bamford is ready. He's fit, available, and he's looking fresh and sharp. So he is one possibility. But Jess Marsh also said Joe Gelhardt, or Joffy, as he often returns, is another option. He could even start 2. But obviously that would mean a slight tweak in his formation. He does tend to set up in a 4-2-3-1. Dan James is a player who could move on deadline day, and that may impact on other things. Elsewhere within that Leeds squad, we've seen Junior Firpo, Luke Ayling, and Liam Cooper all back on the training pitches, although Liam Cooper is probably the closest of those 3 to a starting berth. Junior Firpo off the back of a second MCL injury, and Luke Ayling had knee surgery earlier in the summer. And Stuart Dallas is the only other problem. We do not expect a return this year, so probably early 2023 for him. So that's it for now. By all means, if you do have any questions, pop them in the comment box below. Kind of get the words out, or you know where to find me on Twitter at Ben Dinnery or at Premier Injuries. And as always, you've got the premierinjuries.com injury table. We'll see you all again very soon.